And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another. Well, I guess we're sort of excited from the Brown game, but mostly disappointed, I think, even over both games, which we'll definitely get into the Harvard game more tonight. This episode was meant to cover both the Brown game and the Harvard game, but Jeff and I have been talking. I think we'll concentrate mostly on the Harvard game. We'll touch very briefly on the Brown game. But regardless, you are back with Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network covering IU women's basketball. And today is our 133rd episode, recorded on the evening of Thursday, November 7th, 2024. And I'm your host, Kathy Amos, joined tonight by my co-host, Jeff Marlow. Again, we'll be breaking down your, I guess, probably formerly number 25 Indiana Hoosiers 82-60 win over the Brown Bears, and then the loss tonight in overtime 72-68 over the Harvard Crimson. Those two games now bring their record to 1-1. But as usual, even though it's kind of a hard decision here on between even both games, we'll start our show as we do every banner moment. And Jeff and I were chatting about this as well, and I think we landed on we're going with Lily Meister's double today. So we all know that Lily is trying to fill some really big shoes this year with Mackenzie Holmes leaving, and we know she's not expected to do it all alone. But tonight she did show how she is really starting to grow into her junior year with her first double-double of her career. And so we're going to go with Lily Meister having her first double-double for our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And our banner moment tonight is brought to you, as always, by Home Field Apparel. They're the presenting sponsor of the entire Back Home Network, who includes a plethora of podcasts for your listening pleasure, including the Assembly Call, Crimson Cast, X's and Joe's, and the Dribble Drive with Austin Rinder. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating product lines for the schools in their existing line. So you're bound to find something that you or anyone in your life that loves great collegiate gear will absolutely love. Not only do you get great quality apparel, but you're supporting an Indiana-based business that has its roots in the Kelly School of Business. So go to homefieldapparel.com, and if it's your first time ordering, use our promo code HOME23 to get 15% off your entire order. Again, that promo code is HOME23 for 15% off, and the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right. So we'll okay. Sorry, there was some old stuff in here. I didn't really have any news headlines. Jeff, did you find anything that had came out here since our last podcast?
Yeah, I mentioned it in the Discord tonight. Congratulations to Tyra Bush. She had her first child today, a little girl. So congratulations to Tyra and her husband. So that's the only news I know of between now and the last time we were on.
That's right. Yeah, maybe we can, we'll have a future, another Hoosier basketball player that takes after her mom with a baby being born. So yeah, well, congratulations to Tyra and her husband. So, well, with that, we'll just move right along. Jeff, let's move on to your Marlow's musings. Why don't you hit us with some of your initial thoughts of both the Brown game and the Harvard game, and then we'll get into a little bit more going from there.
Yeah, I think I did not really go back and watch the Brown game, just kind of followed along. I had some basketball stuff going on here. But a tale of two games. The Brown game had some ups and downs. Obviously, the turnovers a little bit of concern in that game, and we're going to talk about the turnovers tonight. But they scored 82 points or whatever it was. They scored in the 80s. So the offense was clicking. They played at the pace they wanted to. So some kind of good and bad, but the game tonight is what we're going to spend most of our time on. I think we're going to have plenty to say here in a few minutes about that. So I'll save that for then.
Yeah. So I'm going to kind of jump around and go off script here, Jeff. So, forgive me if I throw you off here, but I thought what we would do first is just go ahead and start with the Brown game, which you kind of touched on. The same thing, I think the theme there was turnovers and just really not great defense. We saw a lot of zone in that game, which again, we'll talk about in the Harvard game, because they played a lot of zone tonight. But I think at the end of the day, Indiana in that game, they ended up with 18 turnovers, which, their goal is 12, and really not great shooting from 3-point at 25%. So those are kind of a couple of themes that I saw from the Brown game, just in terms of overall play. But any kind of themes that you would want to point out from that game?
Well, even though they didn't shoot well from three, they shot over 50% for the game, so they were shooting well inside the arc.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
so with Brown, I know they played a little bit of zone as well. I'm not sure I'm a fan. I get it. They're playing a little smaller at times, but I'm not sure that I'm a big fan of the zone. I think Terry Morin's whole defensive philosophy has been so rooted in their man-to-man and how they play. I wonder if that's taken away a little bit, but again, I'm speculating there. Obviously I'm not at practice, but the zone looks wide and doesn't look like it's covering very well at times, especially against Harvard tonight. So, but no, I didn't have any major takeaways from, again, first game you'd expect. Unfortunately, we didn't get it. Usually you're making your improvement from game 1 to game 2.
That's right.
We looked like tonight we
Went
were
the wrong way.
impressed.
That's right. Well, let's just go ahead and wrap up the Brown game then and give out our Game Ball and Hoosier Hustle awards for that game. And then we'll spend the balance of the time talking about Harvard. So who do you have, Jeff, for your Game Ball from the Brown game?
I'm going to go with Sid. I think Sydney had, double there. And so go with Sydney here on the Game Ball for the Brown game.
Yeah, I had the same thing. So we'll make it nice and easy there with Sydney, just to make sure we do highlight her, to read her whole stat line from that Brown game. Sydney did have, she played 29 minutes. She was 8 of 14 from the field, 1 of 6 from 3-point land, 3 of 5 from the floor. She had a double-double with 10 rebounds and 20 points, as Jeff pointed out. So a really nice game all around for Sydney in that Brown game. So Sydney gets our first official Game Ball of the year. And how about for hardest worker? Who do you have from that game?
I'm going to go with Striplin. I thought Caroline Striplin really came out and gave a nice lift. And I know you could maybe go with Yarden here and as well, but I'm going to go with Striplin here on the hardest worker.
Well, we're gonna wrap this one up real quick, Jeff, because I had Caroline Striplin as well. I thought she came in and she ended up first off the bench. She ended up playing 12 minutes, shot 6 of 8 from the field, and 5 of 5 from the from the free throw line for 17 points in her 12 minutes. So I just thought she was incredibly efficient. I also thought I really enjoyed what I saw from her on the defensive end. She was definitely pretty high energy for us in that game. Well, let's just go ahead, unless you had anything else on the Brown game, let's just go ahead and pull the Band-Aid off, if you will, and let's break down this Harvard game a little bit more. So
I agree.
Usually we talk about some pivotal plays. So Jeff, are there any particular pivotal plays, or maybe we don't even do specific plays, if you have just general themes that you want to start talking about here?
Yeah, I'll go back to the first quarter. Obviously, we got behind 21-7. It was kind of a slow start for both teams. But I felt like for some reason tonight, Kathy, and maybe you'll disagree, but I felt like we let our defense, or excuse me, our offense really kind of affect the whole game. And for a team that usually is pretty mentally tough, I thought that they allowed their lack of offense to really seep into how they played. They started turning it over in bunches. I think we had them 11 turnovers in the first quarter alone. And then their defense kind of got away from them toward the last third of the quarter. And I thought all that was because they were playing so crappy on offense. And that just, that was part of it. And that's one of the first pivotal, kind of my first pivots that I'll go to tonight for me, is just the lack of offense and then how it affected the whole game, and especially on the middle side of it.
Yeah, I agree. I had that similar type of things. We're not shooting in that first quarter as well. I thought we really let Harvard's defense and their press both really get to us. Like you mentioned, we had 11 turnovers, but we didn't even get our first field goal in that game until 6 minutes in. With 4 minutes left, 4:01 exactly. I wrote it down. 4:01 left. Chloe Moore McNeil finally gets our first field goal by driving to the bucket, and that made it 12-4. So right out of the gate, Harvard just really came out and punched us in the mouth, and we just never seemed to respond. I thought there were moments where the ball seemed to be moving, but it seemed pretty far and few between behind for this year, or for tonight. I just really thought that the ball was sticking in places. There were a lot of times we had open shooters, but we either never got them the ball, or by the time we did, the defense had collapsed on them, and they just didn't seem to know how to kind of hit back with that wrong game, with the Harvard defense that, and they were swarming. Hats off to Harvard. I thought they really came out, had a game plan for us, and executed us, and we just didn't know how to respond.
And I'll go along with that. Harvard smacked us in the mouth, to kind of, to give it, the parable here. They smacked us in the mouth. They were physical with us, and we acted like we weren't ready for it for the most part. And that was disappointing. I'm also going to go to the vets disappointed me tonight. For the most part, Sydney and Chloe were non-existent. Yarden had some moments, but she also led the team with 7 turnovers. And so while she put some points up, I didn't think she led very well. And I don't think any of them led very well. And I know the staff has to take some of that blame too, but the players on the floor with a veteran group, with the exception of, Lily, Shea didn't do much, and Shea was disappointing. I mean, 3 of your 5 starters really didn't give you much tonight. And I was really disappointed from Chloe's standpoint, because I really felt like she almost shied away from wanting the ball. And now toward the end she did, but it looked like she didn't want to run the point. And so I don't know what's there. I didn't think Chloe played all that well, judging from what I saw, followed on the Brown game, looking at the stats. But if this team's really, again, I'm not jumping off the pier here. I'm not jumping off the cliff here, because I just think one game doesn't define who you are. I think the teams sometimes have to have a game like this before you can, get yourself mindset. But it is concerning that your starting point guard, who's been around for a while, didn't seem to be engaged, and or at least didn't seem to want to take control. And I find that to be interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Touching more a little bit on Chloe, she ended up with only, and I'm using only loosely in quotes here, and only 3 turnovers. But those turnovers to me seemed just really lackadaisical. There was one really costly one, I thought, towards the end. I think it was in the regulation still. It might have been in overtime, but I think it was in regulation, where they were inbounding the ball on Harvard's end of the court. And she just turned her head before the ball got to her, and the ball went off her hands and went out of bounds. It was just those kind of, errors that led to the 27 turnovers that we ended up with for the game. And, back to Yarden as well. Yes, she ended up with 20 points, but as you mentioned, she fouled out with 5 fouls and 7 turnovers. And I believe 2 of those fouls and turnovers were actually offensive fouls, right, where she just kind of bull in China shopped it, if you will. That last one in particular, it looked like she just tucked her ball under her arm.
And Lily's wide open.
Football players. Yeah, and just ran over the people, and then looked surprised that she was called for a foul.
All she had to do was
such bad timing.
Not trying to interrupt you, but all she had to do was dump it to Lily, and it was a layup.
That's right. Yeah, it was just really bad decision making from not just Yarden. I just thought all around there was a lot of bad decision making tonight too. But those two in my mind, those 2 charging fouls from Yarden really stuck out to me in terms of just poor decision making from her.
Yeah, and 2 things here I think go together. They're not shooting the ball from deep very well. They didn't shoot it very well against Brown. They were 3 for 18 tonight, 17%. And for a team that needs to be able to play with some pace, that helps. They need to be able to hit threes, because it allows them to score in bunches. They didn't get that tonight. But then also you look at it, Kathy, Harvard 16-0 in fast break points. And we're a team that wants to play with pace, and we had 0 fast break points.
No, we just couldn't. Mainly, I don't feel like we could hang on to the ball, which also not hanging onto the ball, not shooting the ball well. As you mentioned, the three-pointers, we were 1 of 10 in the first half, 1 of 10, and finished up only 3 of 18. So, Shea Chusky, I agree with you. I don't think either for first 2 games here out of the gate have been stellar, but this one in particular, I thought was just a really poor game from Shea. She was in particular 0 of 3 from the 3-point line, 1 of 4 from the field with only 4 points, and ended up fouling out. Just really didn't get much from her in those 25 minutes. And so we really need to figure out how we can get her ramped up. But anyway, I digress. 9 assists. That has to be one of the lowest assist mark for this team that I have seen absolutely in years. So there was just so much that went wrong for tonight, and so much uncharacteristic of a Coach Morin coach team. I think, especially of what we've seen the last 5 years, 6 years or so.
Well, you speak of Chesky, and I agree with you, but this also shows you why plus minus is a flawed stat. Shea's the only one with a positive plus minus. She was plus 7 in 25 minutes. So, for as badly as we thought she played, at least when she was on the floor, the team was putting up points. I don't know if I agree with that in my head, but the stats say that. The other thing, too, go back to, and I don't want to make it sound about injuries. I don't want to be that person that tries to make it sound like an excuse, but I really do believe that this team needs more ball handling. It needs more guards and a team that already has guards. But I've said all along, I just believe that Lene Beaumont has future star stud written all over, and when she can finally get on the floor. And then Lexi Bargesser obviously showed last year the things she can do. So you're taking a couple players out of the mix that could really help this team, but this team shouldn't have needed those two to win tonight.
Not tonight. No, that is absolutely true. I think the ball handling, I mean, we spread the turnover love around, right? 27 turnovers that clearly didn't all come from Chloe and from our guards and Shea, and just to touch on Shea, I was pretty hard on her with my comments. I'm not giving up on her yet. It's two games. We saw Sarah Scalia too, when she transferred in, had some growing pains getting into the system. What we can't have from Shea Chesky this year is what we had from Sarah. It took Sarah almost a full season to figure out. We need Shea to figure it out way sooner this year than Sarah was able to. So, again, I hate doing the comparison from player to player because they're different players. However, we did see that kind of struggle from Sarah as well. So not writing the book off on her just yet, but it was just an all-around bad effort. There's no one that didn't get bit by the turnover bug at all. I mean, I was talking with my husband after the game. We'll get into our game ball, and I was talking about who I might vote for. And he's like, well, who had the fewest turnovers? And I said, well, Shea Chesky did, but she only played 25 minutes, and Jules Lamondola, who only played 5. So this might be a good time to talk a little bit about Jules. Jeff, we didn't see her at all in the first half. She came in, hit a nice 3-pointer for us. And then didn't play hardly at all the rest of the game. And from what reports we had, she's not hurt. She wasn't on the injury report even as questionable, and ended up only playing 5 minutes tonight. I really thought we could have used her a lot more tonight, but what are your thoughts on why maybe we didn't see Jules?
Again, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus here, but number one, I do think that there was one shot there of the bench during the first half where Jules looked like she was not a happy camper. You could almost see it written on her face. And so I wonder if there was a discipline issue. I hope not. Maybe I shouldn't say it on a public podcast, but it just looked like her face was like she was, like, why I could help, I could do something. And I think Jules should get more minutes. I will say that. I put it in the Discord, unpopular opinion. I would give Jules more time than I give Hannah. But again, I'm not coaching the team, but I just think that your upside's more with Jules than it is with Hannah. And I get it. I know why Coach Morin does some of the rotations she does, but you look, for example, tonight, Hannah played 22 minutes. She didn't score at all. She had 4 rebounds, 2 turnovers. So she really wasn't contributing a ton. And then you look in plus minus, she was minus 12. She was the worst of all of them in terms of plus minus. Again, I know plus minus is flawed. So I'm not sure what to make of Jules.
Yeah, I wasn't either. And again, to caveat this, Jeff and I are not in practice. So we have no idea what's going on in practice. So maybe she just wasn't practicing hard enough. And this was Coach Morin's way of trying to get through to her that, she needed to step it up. So we'll see. Again, it's 2 games in. She did get a lot of run in the Brown game, not so much this game. So we have no real pattern or anything, but it is something to kind of stick a pin in and keep an eye on, I think, going forward. Any other? Go ahead.
I'm going to go. I actually have a couple things I still want to. One more because I got a feeling the other thing I want to talk about is going to come up in the game ball. On a positive, 31 of 38 at the free throw line tonight.
That's
31 of 38, 82%. Now they did miss a couple key ones down the stretch and in the overtime, but the free throws are what kept them in the game. Otherwise, Harvard blows us out of our own gym.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I noted that in the first half, I think we had like 11 points, and that was the only way we were only down by 2, I think. And that at one point, I think we had way more free throws than we did field goals for sure in terms of makes.
The The one thing that was sad about that, Kathy, is partially getting back to the veterans and so some leadership here, and partly on the officiating. But early in the fourth quarter, we were already in the bonus. We were going to have a good 7-8 minutes of just going to the free throw line. And I didn't think we were very aggressive going after that. I didn't think we got aggressive going to the basket because we went a long stretch without a field goal. All of our points were coming to the free throw line. But then we seemed to, and I thought some of ours legit fouls, a couple, but all of a sudden now we've basically put Harvard in the, in the bonus. Mm-hmm. Or, pretty not too long after that. And I was looking real quick, the fourth quarter, we shot 14 free throws. That's how, because we were in the bonus so much of the time, and we should have been able to take advantage of that, and we didn't.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So, and speaking of your aggressiveness with that theme, Jeff, just to touch a little bit more on it, that's one thing I felt was really missing from this team, again, that we haven't really seen in the last 5 years, where it was just a lack of aggressiveness and toughness. We came out again, like I think back, even when we lost to Miami, similar thing, right? They came out and kind of punched us in the mouth, but Miami, no offense to Harvard, is probably on a slightly different level. And we bounced back from that one and still almost beat them. Here, this just never, in my opinion, should have happened. And again, we're playing so much zone, which is uncharacteristic. I don't feel like we're executing it real well. The ball is sticking on offense, just all around. I just felt like we were not aggressive. We were slow in all of our steps, on both ends of the floor. And there's just something that, has to kind of pick up, and it has to start with some kind of leadership from one of our veterans, whether in my opinion, it's got to be either Chloe or Sid. There are fifth year seniors. They've been around, especially Chloe. This is her 5th year in the program. One of them has to step up and be more of a vocal leader. And I didn't really see any evidence of it, right? I didn't notice either one of them trying to get the ladies together on the floor and huddle up and get them going. There just didn't seem to be any energy, and they sure as heck didn't really lead with their play. So that's kind of where I've landed, I think, with this game. I think I'm like you. I'm not jumping off the pier. I'm not waving the white flag. I don't think the program is, sunk. But there are definitely some warning flags here we're going to have to keep our eye on as we continue moving forward in this season.
I agree.
Well, we have talked a lot about numbers, so we normally would do notable numbers here at this point. I don't really have a whole lot left. I think we've exhausted all of them in terms of like team play. And but do you have any other team numbers we haven't touched on yet that you want to touch on? Maybe bench points?
Well, yeah, the bench points 23-7, in favor of Harvard. The other thing I was going to go to was obviously the points off turnovers. Harvard had outscored us 32-11 on points off turnovers.
That's right. Yeah. It's not really a number per se. And I mentioned the bench points, which was 23 for Harvard and only 7 for us. It was just even the bench. I understand 2 of our rotational players are hurt and out, but we only had 3 people that came in and played off of the bench. 1 for 22 minutes, 1 for 12, and 1 for 5. And you compare that with Harvard, they had 5 different players coming off of the bench, 3 of them giving almost 19 or more. One of them might sound a little familiar if those you maybe didn't pick up, who was shooting those free throws at the end. That was Mona Zarek, who used to be an Indiana player who just transferred to Harvard. So just an interesting turn of events, but I just thought Harvard looked like the more aggressive and the deeper team tonight, which I wasn't expecting to see.
I agree.
Okay. Any other numbers that you want to touch on, or do you want to switch over to game ball?
Let's head to the game ball.
Let's do it. Well, Jeff, I'm the host, so that means you get to go first. Not a whole lot to love on this game, but game ball, we'll still figure it out. So who would you like to vote for your game ball?
I'm going to go with Lily here. And for her first double-double, 20 points, 15 rebounds. 7 of those were offensive rebounds. She was 8 of 13 at the free throw line. She was, you'd like to see her be a little better there. She had a block and a steal. But unfortunately, Lily also had 6 turnovers. So, but I'm going to go with Lily here as for my game ball. Because again, I thought overall Lily played fairly well and was giving us good effort.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jeff. That's who I had down. This one was an easier one for me to pick. I think the next award is going to be a little bit harder. So we'll go ahead and give Lily our game ball for our second game of the season. That's her first one for the year. And then now we'll move on to the Griesberger hardest worker. I don't know about you. I'm really struggling on this one, so we might need to talk it through. But why don't you start us off and we'll see where we end up landing.
Yeah, I don't think you can give it to anybody off the bench.
No,
I'm struggling to give it to the Sydney or Chloe because I just didn't feel like they did enough. Shea fouling out, so almost by default, I'm going to go to Yarden here.
Yeah,
20 points, 5 rebounds, an assist, 2 steals, but 7 turnovers. So and as you said, Kathy earlier, fouled out. So, but then almost just by default, it has to go to Yarden here for the hardest worker.
Yeah, Jeff. I guess this will be a shorter segment than I was expecting because I went through the exact same thought process. So we already gave Lily our game ball. So that eliminated her unless we're going to give her both our awards and break our own rules, which, hey, it's our show. I guess we could do that if we wanted to. But yeah, I didn't see enough from really anyone else of anybody off the bench or from the starting outside of Yarden with her 20 points. And so she almost gets it for, I know I was harping on her with her ill-advised drives to the bucket in terms of she just went too far, but at least she was trying to be aggressive where I didn't see that from anywhere else. So, fault her for maybe, picking the wrong time and bad decision-making on when to maybe drive and instead of drive a little bit, pull up and kick it out or over to Lily. But at least she was trying, and you saw flashes of that from Chloe. But that was really about it. So I agree with you. I think we'll land on Yarden for this one as well. So that wraps up our game ball and our hardest worker. So we've got 2 different sets. Our first game was Sydney Parrish and Caroline Striplin. And then in the second game, we have Lily Meister and Yarden Garzone. So last year, Jeff, we were doing something we called the numbers watch or records watch. I changed it kind of to numbers watch because I don't necessarily think we're going to have any records that get broken this year per se, but there are 2 players that are nearing some momentous kind of events for us. So the first one is Chloe Moore McNeil. She started out the year with 813 points. So she is closing in on 1,000. And she was also ranked 10th in assists with 354 for her career. So I've been watching her numbers, and after these 2 games, she's now up to 825 points, and she's 360 on the assists. So just the assists, she would need 7 more to move up to 9th. So I will fully expect, with Chloe, she will round out in form, and we'll see a lot more assists. I'm hoping her points numbers ratchet up 2 and 10, and the 2 games respectively probably aren't great. Yarden, on the other hand, had 16 against Brown, 20 against Harvard tonight. She started out the year 712, so she's up to 748 points. So she only needs around 250 points through the rest of this year to become another 1,000-point player. We've only had 31 in program history. So why is that momentous? So, even though we've been pretty harsh on them tonight, they have had some really great years for us. And I do want to make sure we recognize some of the positive. The other thing Yarden is kind of tracking on is 3-point field goals made. She needs 157 to move into 10th place on the all-time 3-pointers made. She is at right now 135. So those are some of the numbers watch that we have for you, and we'll keep updating those after all of our games. Well, Jeff, how about, do you want to talk about the upcoming game that we have? And then we can give final thoughts. Oh, we had around the Big Ten too. We could touch briefly on. So.
Yeah, obviously the next game is going to be against Butler at Hinkle Fieldhouse in Annapolis. That'll be Wednesday the 13th, and we are going to try and have a show after that. That game is on Flow Sports, and so I'm assuming it's subscription based. And what I'm going to do is just try to listen to Austin on the radio, and go from there. Tip time is 7 Eastern, 6 Central. Butler's played 1 game so far, an 87-45 victory over Chicago State. Aisha Walker with 11 points, and Tally Williams scored 9 off the bench. 9 players scored, all 13 played. And IU leads the all-time series 9-1 with the lone loss coming in 2012 at Hinkle, 59-56. The last matchup was in Bloomington in 2022, and IU won that game 67-50. So a game that, over the years has been played off and on, but IU has tended to play well. I would imagine you will see a hungry team come out on Wednesday. If I don't, then I'm really going to have some questions.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm going to be looking for. I'll be honest. I don't know a whole lot of Butler other than what we have and kind of a run sheet that Jeff just ran down for you. But I do know we have to play better than we played tonight, especially going now up to Hinkle. If we played this poorly at home, if we walk out into Hinkle and play that poorly again, I think we're going to be in some serious trouble in that game. So yeah, like Jeff mentioned, neither of us have Flow Sports, so we'll do our best to follow along with Austin over the radio feed, and listen and try to give you some insights of what we heard, I guess, instead of what we see. Austin is really great if you haven't listened to him before, so hopefully it will turn out okay. So that is our plan for that. Let's quickly touch around the Big Ten. It's early into the season. It just started here on Monday, but Northwestern has already lost a game as well. They lost 81-77 to Illinois State. There were two games played in Paris. They were technically the first two games of the season. USC defeated Ole Miss. That game was way tighter than I really expected, with Ole Miss really making USC work to the end. USC pulled it out 68-66. I thought they had a lot of turnovers at 26 until I saw our game tonight. But, we are not the only ones that can be bitten by that that turnover bug, where USC had 26 turnovers in that game and still managed to figure out a way to win. Right after that game in Paris was UCLA. They played Louisville. Also a really, really tight game. UCLA ended up pulling ahead there towards the end in the fourth quarter and won 66-59. The most surprising one to me, Jeff, I don't know if I didn't get to see any of this game because of things I was in the middle of, but I was keeping an eye on the score and kind of listening to it. Michigan played South Carolina in Vegas. And I really just expected from things I had heard that South Carolina was already in midseason form and they looked better than last year and this and this and this. I thought they were going to mop the floor with Michigan. They absolutely did not do that. In fact, Michigan led for a huge part of the game and only ended up losing that game 62-68. And then the other game tonight, I don't know, Jeff, do you have the final score on that Illinois game? This was their first night, and they were playing a number 19 Florida State. So I'll see if I can pull that up here real quick while we're yapping. So Illinois ended up beating number 19 Florida State 83-74. So those are some of there were other games, not trying to downplay any of the other Big Ten games, that we just kind of picked out some of the highlights we thought we would share. All right, Jeff, let's wrap this up. What are your final thoughts on our first two games of the season?
Well, my prediction from a week ago is already out the window, because I thought we were going to win all the non-conference games except for down in the Bahamas. So that prediction just went out the window.
Well, maybe not. Maybe we'll win all of the Bahamas and at least our record will still be right.
Oh, that's true. But they're going to have to play a whole lot better than they did tonight. And again, I get one game. I'm trying not to go into, where we've been so much with watching with the men over the last couple of years, where we feel like the earth is collapsing, the sky's falling over one bad game.
Right.
Sometimes for a coaching staff, as hard as it is to take as a fan, sometimes as a coaching staff, you need a game like this because it allows you to be able to snap the players back into focus. Where I'm not saying this is the issue, but I think sometimes when you've had success for as long as this group has, they just assume they're going to go out there and a team like Harvard will either roll over for them or it'll just be easy. And Harvard came out there tonight and smacked them in the mouth. I think Harvard has a chance to be pretty decent in the Ivy and get an automatic bid to the NCAA tournament, depending upon how their season plays out. But it's not a game we should have lost, let alone really been a single-digit game. It's not a game we should have lost. So there's things to fix. And as a coach, that's the start. That's the key to identifying what are the fixable things, and then what are the things you got to try and hide. And I think there's a lot of fixable, but there may be a couple things they're going to have to learn to hide. And one of those for me is the ball handling. Unless tonight was just the real app, or the first two games are kind of the aberration, but we've already had more turnovers. We're in first two games than this program's really used to accepting. So you may have to find a way to try and hide some of the ball handling and the turnover issue, just because I think we're going to have to the program's going to have to start to live with 15, 16 is more of their average than 12.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything you said there. Again, I also don't want to live and die by one or two games in this case. Certainly the game tonight, it is not left a good taste in our mouth. I can't imagine it's left a good taste in our players or our coaches' mouth either. The real test, as we kind of mentioned with when we previewed the what's next section of our podcast, is going to be that Butler game. Can they regroup over the next 6 days and go up to Indianapolis and pull out a win and show that this was the anomaly and this is not going to be the norm? So, what are we watching for? Lingering questions. I think we have a ton of lingering questions and things we'll be watching for or hearing for or listening for, whatever your way you're able to get into the game. But there are a ton of things to fix in this, both of these two games. Most notably, in my opinion, I think you have to concentrate on the turnovers and the defense. Those to me are probably the two things they have to focus on and that I'm really going to be keen on in that Butler game. So those are my final thoughts. All right. Well, we are going to wrap it up here, ladies and gentlemen, on a little bit later show tonight than I believe any of us were probably expecting. So again, as we mentioned, up next, we will be returning on November 13th. That will be after the Butler game. But if you do want to see us do the show live and be part of our live chat, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@BackHomeNetwork. You can also become part of our private community as well. If you're not already, please go to assemblycall.substack.com to find out more. Special thanks to John Ringer of Riggs Design for designing our logos. A big thank you to Bob Thompson for the music you heard. And most of all, thank you all who are here with us listening and chatting along live or listening after the fact. We appreciate you, and we will be back to talk IU hoops with you again on Wednesday. But until then, keep your elbow in and your eyes on the rim, and let's go Hoosiers. Well, this will be the first time I believe we haven't been ranked in over 5 years.
Yeah, what they say tonight on the broadcast, 95 or 96 straight weeks in the top 25.
Like that. Yeah. So. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to talk about it anymore. No. Hey, we got a football game in between now and then.
Yep. Yeah, so, at least football will save us.
Football is saving us from basketball. Who would have ever thought? So yes, so we're going to concentrate on that Michigan game coming up on Saturday. In fact, I have some plans with some friends, and we altered it to start our plans later to make sure I have time to finish the game. And one of my friends is a Michigan fan as well, so gotcha. Even better. So, well, good. Well, good night, everybody. Thanks for coming out, and have a wonderful week and weekend ahead of you. If you are a veteran as well, happy Veterans Day on Monday, and hope you're all staying safe out there. Take care.
Night, everybody.